my name is Alec from cassettepunk.com. I'm preparing for a local exhibition of art as part of the East Side Culture Crawl. This is a yearly open house in the East Vancouver area where a lot of local artists will open their studios and let you see a bunch of interesting spaces and local art. It's culturecrawl.ca as the website, and the dates are November 19th to 22nd, so coming up. Please come say hi, and in the process of preparing for that, I dusted off this, which is probably the first project I ever made that would be considered suitable for the kind of thing I do at cassettepunk.com. I finished this when I was about 20 years old, and it's from about 2000, so you can do the math. This predates the iPod, and it was an MP3 player that I made for my car, which was a terrible 1992 or so Mercury Topaz. This would plug into my cigarette lighter for power and then sit on the console between the front two seats, and then I'd be able to access this keypad to control it, and it would plug into my car stereo. So it's working, which is amazing because I haven't actually had this thing powered up for a lot of years. And as you can hear, I've got a mix of stuff that might appeal to a 19 or 20-year-old. I don't even know what's on there anymore, but yeah, so it's made out of a Magical electronic Rolodex of sorts that would have a listing of names and numbers, and you'd be able to press a button to cause it to dial that number. It's from the 60s or so, and when I got it, it was jet black. I gutted it. This is probably in about 1998 or so, so if you're screaming about me destroying an antique, it wasn't quite so much of an antique back then, and those parts are long gone, so you may as well not bother complaining. I installed into it a single board computer, much like the Raspberry Pi, but of course in 1999 or so, 2000, those were pretty hard to come by. But I was working for a guy who was involved in that kind of stuff, and so I traded one of those for a number of hours of work on embedded Linux, and then used some of those same skills to build this. The keypad itself is from a peripheral keyboard for a full-size computer. It's just a set of row column switches with no controller built in. So I hooked that up to the single board computer through that machine's parallel port. That was the easiest way back then to gain easy access to the raw pins and start doing some electronic hobby work in the way that you would now do with an Arduino, for example. Then there's an audio jack on the back, and as you can see, I've got a couple of desktop speakers plugged in. So I just went through a few different albums, and it's got tools to sort and randomize and all that kind of thing. There's no display on the front of this. So instead of having a display to tell you what song you're playing, there's this.
You're on the new Turbo One service, Servant MP3.
So it says in really rudimentary text-to-speech the name of the track you're listening to. There were a few different iterations of this. In 1999 or so, I had an old 486 DX4100 laptop underneath the front car seat, and I used that for a while. And that was just barely fast enough to play MP3s. Then I got this chassis and this board, and the second iteration had, instead of the keypad, it had a Morse code key, so I could actually key in single letter Morse code commands to control it. T and E for next and previous track, F and R for last and next album, and then if you keyed in S, for example, that would enter a search mode where you could then key in Morse code letters to search your entire playlist for anything with that word in it. And then there were 4 lights drilled into it that would display a bunch of different status information. That was actually much more interesting than this project is right now, but it turned out to be not that practical. Plus I had a bit of a run-in with the border guards trying to cross into the US in late 2001, if you can imagine what that was like. I drove across the border without realizing this was going to be a bad idea to have on the center center console. And so I sat in the examination room while they went back and forth for about half an hour with parts of my car. They disassembled this, and they disassembled the rear speaker I built in the back, and then I had to rebuild it into this second iteration. So yeah, that's 15 years more or less since it was last used, and I'm really happy to see it still works. There's a little window in the front where you can see the hard disk, and if you flip up a couple of tabs on the bottom, on the underside, there's also a way to access the hard disk there. There's a 100 base T network jacket inside where you can plug in a network cable to then gain access to the files and to loading music or updating software. Of course, that was long before wireless was a commodity thing, so things were done through wired networks. And I can't really recall what else there was on the control pad here. I did manage to locate, just because I leave old hard disks lying around rather than scrapping them or getting rid of them. I did find the source code for this iteration with the keypad, but also for the iteration before with the Morse code key. So that's the kind of code I wrote when I was 19 or 20, so by my current standards, it's not elegant. I wrote my own linked lists, I wrote my own process control to interact with the MPEG-123 MP3 player. I wrote just a bunch of stuff that you could have done easily with other tools. It's all written in C, but there it is, and it still works. So yeah, if you're in the Vancouver area, please come say hi. Again, that's culturecrawl.ca is the website for the Culture Crawl, and I'll post details on my blog. The dates for that again are November 19th to 22nd. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you in November.